I've been fortunate enough to be in an industry where this industry has been change centric, and as a consequence, it has been a driver of change. Because the technology itself undergoes so much of change, we are in a position to influence companies into adopting technologies at different parts of their own evolution and accelerate the time that they require to hit their goals.
Welcome to FaceTime with Leaders. I'm Priya George, and today we have a guest who embodies transformation, strategy, and leadership in its truest sense. Mr. Shanmukha Vaidyanathan has spent nearly 3 decades shaping industries, driving large scale business, and redefining how organizations adapt to change. From leading global enterprises like Atos, Wipro, and Mahindra Satyam to spearheading strategic innovation at Morphallaxis LLP, he has built a career that blends technology, governance, and decision science to create real impact. But beyond the boardroom and high stake deals, he's also someone who believes in continuous evolution, helping businesses not just keep up with change, but stay ahead of it. His ability to combine insight, strategy, and execution has made him a trusted name in business transformation and leadership. Mr. Vaidyanathan, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome to FaceTime with Leaders.
Thank you, Priya, for this conversation.
So, without further ado, let's get straight to it. Mr. Vaidyanathan, nearly 3 decades of leading transformations, driving strategy, and shaping industries. I can imagine what a journey it must have been. But if we pause for a moment and look back, there must have been moments of doubt, breakthroughs that changed everything, and lessons that shaped the leader you are today. Was there a defining experience or a moment that set everything in motion for you? A moment where you realized that this is what I'm meant to do?
So, Priya, as I look back on my life and look for those high points and low points, which have been times in my life where I've had to reflect on, okay, this is a situation which is prompting me to really re-examine my value system, the environment around me, and what I am doing. There have been a few of them. Academics-wise, like any other person from my generation, the idea was academics was a gateway into a career and thereon to a prosperous life. So that was the background that I come from. And after doing my schooling and engineering, I went to the Baba Atomic Research Center to do my final year project. And I had an excellent mentor over there. So his point of view was not to look at technology for the sake of it, but to look at technology as a game changer, as a means to an end. So it would always be about look at the end and then define what would be the best means to get to that end. And the work environment in BRC for a final year engineering student, it was like, heaven on earth. No dearth of resources, uh, guidance across really senior people whom I could look up to, ask questions, and they were very patient with me. So that helped me set a foundation saying that look at the end, not necessarily get involved with the means. My first job after my stint at the IIM as a student was at Wipro, and that was the lowest paying offer that I had. And it probably was one of the most enriching experiences in my life, given the fact that the value system that Wipro inculcated in me, the focus on ethics, the focus on keeping the customer satisfied, delivering on commitment. So these were not just catchwords; these were the way of life for me during my tenure over there, both in India as well as in the US. So the base value systems did not change, though. Within India, the 5 years that I spent with Wipro, I had three different jobs. So the job profiles kept changing. And as I progressed, they shifted me to different roles. But the key element over there was the value system that never changed. That was a big shaping influence for me. If I could look back and call out the one instance which has had the most profound impact on me,
Yeah.
It was my last 1 year at Satyam. I spent about 8 years in Satyam. I was in
Okay.
Chicago, and then I moved back to India, looking at a business unit that focused on next gen technologies, the 108
Okay.
service, the 104 service, uh, digital convergence, communications enabled business processes. Pretty strong service offerings for those days, 2007, 2008 timeframe. And that's
Understood.
when Jan 7th, 2009 happened, and we got that letter from Mr. Raju saying that things weren't as they ought to be, and there were a lot of irregularities, and that's when he came clean. And then all hell broke loose. So for the next 7, 8 months, I didn't know where my next month's salary was going to come from, but
Oh.
I was almost living in the office with a bunch of my colleagues. We were hanging on to every customer, we were hanging on to every employee, we were hanging on to every tech partner, making sure that the events which were happening in the boardroom over there were not affecting the morale of the people or the confidence that our customers and partners had on us.
Mm.
And looking back, those 9 months were probably the most remarkable of the
Mm.
30 odd years that I've
Mm.
spent as a professional. Not that I ever
Mm.
want that to happen to me again.
Right.
And
Right.
what makes it even more complicated was my mom was down with cancer. Those were her last 7 or 8 months in our family with us.
Oh no.
And that for me was the testing ground, saying that okay, do I want to take a shortcut? Because at that point, Satyam was also the most poached after organization. Just about every other IT
Mm.
company in the world would come after us saying that look, things are bad in your company, and guess what? Things are going to get worse.
Mm.
So you might as well bail out while you can before the stain comes on you and it cannot be moved out.
Right.
And
Right.
I stayed back till the acquisition by the Mahindras happened. I was the lead for the integration of both the organizations on the service offerings, defining, looking at their
Mm.
service offerings, looking at our service offerings, removing redundancies, making sure that we are together adding more value to the customers. Where can we identify points of synergy? That was my charter for the last 4 or 5 months of my tenure at Satyam. So
Mm.
that uh, that period to a great extent defined my understanding in the very true sense of what an organization should be like,
Mm.
what is the uh, what is the commitment that an organization should have to its customers, to its employees, to the society at large, and therefore
Understood.
what should a good board member be like. Now as I
Mm.
undergo my studies over here at the Directors Institute, and I get to understand a little bit more from a theory point of view as to what should be the behavior put forth, what should be the thought process, the sort of matrix of values that one needs to bring to the table to look at the data, ask the right questions, make sound decisions. That experience for me is the most significant guiding factor, because whatever happened to those employees, extremely talented people, a lot of people lost their jobs,
Mm.
and obviously it came as a bolt from the blue, because until that time across the IT industry, everything was going fine. It was
Mm.
India's shining time period. The growth rates were amazing. Everybody had very high degrees of confidence. The stock market was rewarding people in this industry very handsomely. And then this came out of the blue. So suddenly,
Right.
people who are used to good times saw the worst of times.
Understood. Understood.
And that for me, and as I go forward as well, since then, all my work situations, I always ask a question saying that, okay, how does this relate to those months of experience? Is the intoxication of good times really that mind numbing that you can't see good for bad? And to what extent would you take a difficult decision, but a correct
Mm.
decision?
Right.
So that, in a summation, is my
Right.
response to you. Right from my days in college, I've been associated with the Rotary. So I was earlier in the Rotaract movement. That's the youth wing of the Rotary. And since I came of age within the Rotary parlance, I've been a Rotarian. So within the Rotary, another thing that happens to you is a very strong sense of integrity and service gets inculcated into you, which again comes down to, cui bono, who benefits?
Mm.
What are you doing so that someone or a larger community benefits? And you're not doing it exactly for personal gain. I mean, of course, you want to do well personally as well, but the motivating factor is not the motivating factors don't have you in the center. They have somebody else in the center. They either have a customer in center, they have a beneficiary of a social program in the center, and that is a huge motivating factor. And drawing energy from something like that again has been a huge element in the way I've been working and the way I've been shaping my career.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that anecdote as well with us. Um, it's incredible, like I mentioned earlier, how certain moments or certain individuals, whether they are challenges or unexpected opportunities, end up shaping who we become as individuals or leaders. Moving on, Mr. Vaidyanathan driving 55% annual growth for 8 consecutive years and achieving a 45% pipeline conversion rate is nothing short of extraordinary. And growth like that doesn't just happen. It takes vision, it takes strategy, and the ability to execute at the highest level. What were the key decisions or mindset shifts or breakthrough moments that made this success possible? I know you've talked about some of them in your previous response, but apart from those, was there a particular challenge you had to overcome that ultimately shaped your approach to scaling businesses so effectively?
See, the first 3 years of my career, it was like, okay, you're going to office as early as possible in the morning. You're working through and through and through. You're deriving your sense of achievement and self worth through the nature of work that you're delivering out there. For me, it was about people. My first job was a sales job, so it meant that I'm working with end customers. I'm working with sales partners. So
Correct.
my sales partners were dealers. My sales partners were other PC manufacturers. I used to sell printers for Wipro.
Correct. Correct. Okay.
So 50% of my sales used to come through dealers, and 50% used to come from companies who had traditional Wipro competition. So I was selling to my
Okay.
companies, the branded enemy, so to speak. So and they also
Okay.
knew that by buying a printer from Wipro, they are fueling Wipro's revenues. The
Okay.
idea was to
Yeah.
build trust, build transparency,
Hmm.
and build a very very high degree of responsiveness and quality of service that made them trust me. So
Understood.
giving them that message,
Right.
saying that look, if you win, I win. So I'm not looking at my
Right.
win
Right.
through any other lens of perception. That was something that I worked for about a year to achieve, but I was able to
Okay.
do it, and I would consider myself fairly fortunate. I had
Hmm.
good bosses, I had very good mentors,
Hmm.
I had
Hmm.
good teams to
Hmm.
work with, very very well cohesive teams, and the work culture gave me that freedom to make those choices.
Hmm.
So within the ambit of the commercial dynamics that existed around pricing, the fact that I'm selling to my competition, and it was a hyperactive market because those were the days where the assimilation of computer hardware and software into daily businesses, whether it was a bank, whether it was a hospital, whether it was a manufacturing facility, the assimilation was huge. It was exponential. So while I'm very grateful you're calling out numbers like 55 and 45, the industry growth was such that these
Right.
numbers were, I mean, one statement that I would make with some sense of pride is that I was ahead of the industry in terms of numbers. So I kept growing my market share
Absolutely.
by growing faster
Yeah.
than the industry. But that was by making my customer, my sales partners, and my colleagues winners in their own spheres of work.
Right.
And it came back a full circle because there would always be situations where a commitment would just fall short of completely being fulfilled. And then I discover
Hmm.
that somebody else who have not even asked for a favor has worked beyond their mandate to deliver
Hmm.
for me. So as
Right.
you see in that book, The Godfather, Vito
Right. By
Corleone's
Mario Puzo.
way
Yeah.
of life is to do favors to people in the expectations that either he will ask for a favor in return or he may not even ask for a favor, but those people, out of their sense of honor and commitment, will
Correct.
come back. So,
Right.
what goes around comes around in
Comes
a
around.
very beautiful way. And I've
Yes.
been lucky enough to experience that in quite a few moments in my life.
So you forged that kind of relationship, I think,
Yes.
with the people that you were working with. That's
Correct,
impressive.
and that helped me in a great stead in my career later as well because in the last few years of my tenure in Satyam as well as my career in
Hmm.
Atos, a lot of my job involved collaboration. It was all about collaboration.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you're looking at a deal which is 100 million euros and above. So there are about 14 to 1500 different functional points that need to be satisfied, both technically from an operational point of view, from a financial point of view, and wherever we are taking over assets, whether it's a hardware asset, whether it's a license, whether it's people, you have to make sure that each of these assets and each of these functional points is being looked at very, very carefully. It's like one of those, pyramids that you make with cards. You can do 1,000 cards properly. The one card that breaks off brings the whole thing down.
Yes, the weak link. True.
Yeah.
True.
And these
Absolutely.
deals would be fairly long-term deals. I'm talking about 5-year deals, 7-year deals, and such. So
Correct.
you had to
Correct.
look 7 years into the future, look at, and that too in an atmosphere where technology was changing by the minute, and look at how
Correct.
best are you helping your customer fulfill their business objectives. Again,
True.
the concept of keeping the end in the mind, not necessarily getting bogged down with the means.
The
Cui bono.
means.
So who
Correct.
benefits? So and then a few other beneficiaries also came into the picture. It was not just the consumers of IT; it was also the business investors. It was the shareholders, the government. A lot of other stakeholders had to be kept in perspective as we crafted our solutions, as we did our financial engineering, and as we built together the business plan around large deals. So this basic ingrained line of thought that said that keep people happy, work with them, and at the same time make sure that you are defining your boundaries as such that they will come back to you when you need them, or they will look for you at a point when they are in a position to help. That is a big learning for me in my life, and that was, to be honest, one of the driving factors in my success so far.
Right. Achieving that kind of sustained growth takes more than just strategy. And it takes, like you mentioned in your response, vision, adaptability, being able to forge those relationships and sustain them for the long run, the ability to make the right decisions at the right time. So thank you for your response. Mr. Vaidyanathan, managing and closing high value IT deals, especially those exceeding $100 million, requires more than just negotiation skills. It
Yep.
takes strategic foresight. You also talked about building trust in your previous response, the ability to align multiple stakeholders, which also you mentioned earlier. So during your tenure at Atos, you successfully navigated these complexities to drive large scale engagements. What, in your experience, are the key factors that determine the success of such high stake deals? You have mentioned a few points in your earlier responses. Could you shed light on a few more as well?
At the heart of these large deals, there is always the theme of transformation.
Correct.
So you're transforming the way your customer is working. Some of the triggers for this transformation are driven by circumstance. One of the deals that I had, I may not be able to take specific names. One of the transformation was driven by an organizational need to break the organization into components to facilitate more growth. So there was a tech company which broke down its semiconductor business, its handset business, its infrastructure business into separate business units. And the IT assets, which were one unit across the organization, had to be partitioned across individual business units. So that was the seed of transformation, and that had to be built as a very strong business plan, looking at the trends that govern each of these industrial spaces that they would be in. What would these individual units require to be successful in their individual operating spaces? And what role will technology play in enabling them to make that happen? And to facilitate that, what is the human angle that needs to be brought in? So I've been fortunate enough to be in an industry where this industry has been change centric, and as a consequence it has been a driver of change because the technology itself undergoes so much of change. We are in a position to influence companies into adopting technologies at different parts of their own evolution and accelerate the time that they require to hit their goals. Now, there have also been some observations. Some of them have been kind of sobering down in nature. There was a time when ERP was seen as an answer to all business transformation needs. Okay, so you want to do better, implement an ERP. You want to eliminate wastage, implement an ERP. If you look at the objectives kept for every ERP implementation project, close to about 70% of all the ERP implementations worldwide have not met all those objectives. There have been successful up to a measure. I wouldn't say that they have failed, but they have not been successful either. And somewhere people compromise saying that theek hai, itna to mil gaya. So the
Right.
point is the change has been fairly superficial with the sole aim of bringing in new technology because the change is driven by the top. It is forced down the layers of management, down to the shop floor workers, to the field forces, and so on. And the resistance to change is something which is more easily written down rather than understood and worked upon. So the HR angle in managing transformation is a very, very important element, and we learned it the hard way. Because, like I said, a lot of these deals were long term deals. So it's not that we
Correct.
implement something very nice and shiny in year number one, and by year number three, either the people whom we have trained have left the company and gone because they don't want to put up with it, and the new people who have come, they have come with a different set of ideas. Or it could also mean that company A has been acquired by company B, and therefore the nature of the technical solution itself has changed. So managing people as part of the transformation process was a very important aspect. The second important aspect was to very closely monitor trends.
Okay.
We hear a lot of very catchy one-liners, right? The only thing constant is change. And it is true. The question is how constant is change? What is the impact of that change on an organization? And what is the depth of that impact? And to a great extent, rather than play the rat race and say that, look, you need to adapt, otherwise you will lose out on the larger race towards success. The question is, how effectively can I assimilate those changes? And to what extent will it enable me to either jump from step 3 to step 5 without necessarily investing in step 4? So those have been areas that at least I've been pondering on professionally, and I know a lot of industry leaders have also been looking at very closely to try to see should an organization grow on its own evolutionary path, looking at itself and having a very clear understanding of what its internal strengths and weaknesses are, or should the benchmark be solely outward looking and be driven by, okay, person A is doing this, person B is doing this, person C is doing this. They have had their successes. I want to emulate the success. I may not want to emulate exactly the process, but I want the same numbers. So when you're emulating the end result without figuring out what has been the pain and sacrifice and hard work which has gone into that, plus what have been the industry trends and industry events which have shaped that success, because a lot of things would have fallen in place for that success to have happened around the same time. So you can't duplicate those exact laboratory conditions or weather conditions for your company. So you have to succeed your way. So like they say, the engineer MBA combination used to be a very hot combination when it came to either B schools admitting engineers or companies hiring people from B schools saying that, okay, an engineer MBA combo is very good at problem solving. Now the trend is shifting to an MBA combined with a degree in humanities. The reason is the engineer MBA is good at solving problems, no doubt. But you also need to have the wisdom to try to see if a certain problem needs to be solved. Does it need to be solved immediately, and does it need to be solved only this way? And what are the long term implications of solving a problem in a particular way, which may pose problems for you in later in life? If you look at most of the, uh, I wouldn't call them exactly scandals, but unpleasant financial and corporate events which have happened, invariably there is this impression on immediate problem solving which has led to that. Of course, with the benefit of hindsight, we can all look back and say, this is what happened right and this is what happened wrong. This is ingrained into us during our academics using case studies. The question is, a case study is always a historical event. What's happening right now and all those little dynamics of change which are happening in front of your eyes is what you need to keep in mind. And you don't have to emulate somebody else's success blindly. And Usain Bolt may be God when it comes to sprinting, but the amount of hard work he has put, the way God has blessed him with a particular physique and the ability to run in a particular way, you cannot duplicate that. You cannot clone that as it is. You have to develop your success your way. So transformation in that sense has been at the heart of most of those deals. And going forward, again, the concept of transformation has to be a little more than being skin deep. It has to go down at the cellular level. And as a matter of fact, that is what I speak to most of my customers through Morphallaxis. Morphallaxis itself, as a biological term, means transformation and regeneration at the cellular level.
Right.
So you take a starfish, and let's say one limb comes off. From that limb, a new starfish will come out. So that is the biological process that Morphallaxis refers to.
Right. Thank you. And that's a fascinating perspective. Managing deals of this scale isn't just about numbers, it's about vision, trust, and knowing how to bring multiple moving parts together seamlessly. When we think about first steps, the initial first steps into new markets, there's always that moment of uncertainty mixed with opportunity. In your experience, what are the key factors that you consider when venturing into an international market, whether it's understanding local cultures, navigating regulations, or building a network? What we'd like to hear your views on that.
Okay. I'll draw back on my experience with Wipro because that was the first time
Right,
I set out into the international market
right.
with no past experience. So they were taking business managers from the local business and using that headcount to populate the offices in foreign markets.
Hmm.
And in my opinion, that was a very wise move because the culture of the company, which is what they wanted to project in front of the customers, came out through employees who have been marinated in that work culture. So while communication was a very important aspect, one had to make sure that one is communicating properly. Respect for the local culture. There are certain words that we use very easily in India, which are fairly significant words in other culture. For instance, we can at least in the early 2000s, late 1990s and 2000s, an issue meant in India. Okay, the word issue meant a point on an agenda that one wanted to have as a conversation. For instance, I'm meeting you, I'll say that, look, there are some 3 or 4 issues I want to talk to you about. Now, I can't go and say that to a person in America. For them, an issue is a problem. And we were not very sensitive to it at that point. So we used to say issue, and that person
Correct.
used to look at us a little differently. They wouldn't be very dramatic about it, but then back in their mind, they're thinking, okay, is this person only going to come and talk to me about problems? So that's the first
Right.
impression that I have ended up creating, obviously without the intention of doing so.
Hmm.
And it some of this learning came to us the hard way, and some of it I had good local mentors as well. I built up good relationships with customers, and I did not build those relationships as a guy who's a wannabe American. I went there as an Indian. I said that, look, I'm representing an Indian company, and you, sir, are talking to me because there are certain things about India that you appreciate. Our focus on integrity, our focus on knowledge, our focus on respecting intellectual property. Intellectual property respect was a huge soft issue or a soft factor that was below the decision for a lot of American companies and European companies to outsource to India. There are a lot of other countries around India who are also pretty strong on technology, but they never respected intellectual property. There was a big,
Right.
because by nature, Indians are God fearing. So we respect those
Hmm.
boundaries. We know that certain boundaries we will not cross. So
Will
if
not be
you recall
crossed.
that Hamara Bajaj ad, there is a biker going around a Rangoli and going off. Though there's a biker and that person represents rebellion, that soft
But he will
respect for
never.
culture is there. So they don't ride the bike on the Rangoli. Or by mistake, there's another ad where the leg touches somebody, so they touch and they do this.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that is not religion specific or anything. It's like part of India saying that, look, this is
Respect.
no
Yeah.
disrespect intended. So that's the message to be conveyed. So that was the reason these companies were working with us. So the moment we hit on that, we did not hesitate to represent ourselves as ourselves without necessarily having to, become one of them. We said that this is who we are. We'd like to talk to you about ourselves. The business language was more or less the same because it all came down to technical language. It came down to numbers. So whether I had an accent which was predominantly Maharashtrian in nature, or whether I spoke a certain language with a certain different set of inflections. So, and there was another discovery that I made. Within the US, there is a north and there is a south. The way they speak English is different. The way they use
Different.
language is different. The way they pronounce is different. So it's not that we need to be feeling defensive about the fact that there is so much of variety. There used to be people from Andhra Pradesh, from Tamil Nadu, from Bangalore, from the north who would speak English with different accent because that is the effect of their native language on the way they speak
Correct.
English. But at the same time, in the US, there are people who have their roots from Italy. There are people who have their roots from Ireland. There are people who have their roots from Spain. There are people who have their roots from Latin America who speak a different brand of Spanish.
Correct.
Okay, and these languages leave their mark on the way they speak English, and they don't feel the least bit defensive about it. that was one of the learnings that we got, saying that, look, we need to be ourselves. So if we win a deal, we will win the deal as ourselves. So that emphasis that we need to not lose sight of who we are and play to our strengths
Stay rooted.
rather than try to become somebody else. That was part of, I guess, that was a part of learning that Indian software services industry as an industry came together and realized that more or less as a common growth path. The common denominators remained the way they were. You respect integrity, you're being honest, you bring in sufficient amount of transparency so that you don't tell them that, look, I've got a card hidden in my sleeve. Okay, I'm not going to spring surprises on you. If I commit something, I will deliver that something either on time or just before time. Because if I overcommit and if I undercommit and overachieve as a practice, people will look at me saying that, okay, this guy is a fraud. He's keeping too much of buffer in his estimates. So I couldn't go beyond 2 or 3% this way or that way. So even an aggressive commitment, because these things come as a catchword within offices, saying that you should always overachieve. You don't need to overachieve. You, as long as you achieve, that's how you build your credibility. Your dependability comes from the predictability, saying that, okay, if they know that, okay, I've told Shanmukha something, I know he will deliver. It's not that he'll deliver 10% ahead of time. So then in that case, the baseline will change.
Correct.
So mentally, they will also start putting a calculation saying that, okay, if he has quoted so many $1 million as his budget, I know for a fact he has padded in so much, so I can start mentally deducting so much money from the budget. That is the behavior we should avoid. And that again was inculcated in me right from my early days in India.
Right, right. Mr. Vaidyanathan, you've already achieved so much throughout your career. From driving business transformations to leading complex global engagements. As you continue to evolve, what are some of your future aspirations, both in terms of professional growth and the impact you hope to have on the industries you're part of? And looking ahead, what role do you see for yourself in the boardroom?
It comes down to three fundamental points on which I try to build up. Number one, what is the current environment and what are the current baselines? What extra am I bringing to the table? And three, what can I look forward to doing for the same set of constituents in the years to come? So while I look at the boardroom, it also comes down to what sort of boardrooms I'm looking at.
Correct.
So one area that I have had a fair amount of exposure to, both as a professional as well as a Rotarian, there is this small and medium enterprise space out there in India, which has traditionally been family owned. And if you look at the average Joe family owned company, I admit I'm doing a little bit of stereotyping over here. Most of them have survived over the generations with very strong relations with a few suppliers and a few customers.
Yeah.
So it's like, I have a family astrologer, I have a family doctor, I have a family lawyer. So that adage extends to customers and suppliers as well. And now, given the pace at which things are changing, the pace at which globalization is happening, the way in which opportunities are opening up, and how those opportunities are impacting the way people are evaluating options, whether it comes to an option of selling something to you or an option of buying something from you, or for that matter, the option of whether I would want to work for you. There was a time when my parents or my grandparents, they worked for survival. My generation, we work for prosperity. I have a 10-year-old son. He would work probably if the job suited his lifestyle or if it suited his mindset. A very clear indicator of that, there was a time when most of the graduates from an IIT, they went into the public sector. Then the brain drain started. Now, close to about 25%, more than 25% of IIT grads, they want to start businesses of their own, which is an extension of their thought process, those topics that they are very passionate about. So this is a huge transformative element which is hitting the family business model. And this results in a generational, I wouldn't say gap, but a difference in generational thinking where the senior generation is more concerned. Now, they are not worried about the capability of the junior generation. They are concerned about, okay, what if something goes wrong? Because for them, most of these companies, they don't run very deep P&Ls. They run on very thin P&Ls. So they can't afford to make too many mistakes. While they'd like to do a lot of work, they do a lot of work, as a matter of fact. For instance, the concept of charity, it does not exist in the corporate boardroom unless there is concept called CSR, which has been mandated by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Small medium enterprises, they believe in charity as their way of life. So it's not that they are tight-fisted. It is just that they are concerned about survival, and for them, all these topics that we talk about in a textbook, they are existential issues because one wrong step and they are afraid that they may not be able to recover from it, and which is a fact. And they'll have numerous case studies on what has not worked. As a matter of fact, if these people they are hesitant to deploy ERPs, it is because they have seen the statistics saying that 70% ERPs have not worked. More than 85-90% of AI experimental projects have not worked. One has to, there is always a counter to it saying that, okay, you have to be patient. AI is a new technology. So as you're working out case studies, you're working out proof of concepts of AI, you need to set your parameters. Probably you should prepare for potential failures here and then you learn and then you improve on a continuous basis. But these people do not have deep pockets. They cannot afford to make mistakes because for them, recovering from that becomes a problem. So for them, the concept of transformation is something that they would balk at. So the approach that I'm talking about, which is about doing a transformation without losing the essence of that organization, without losing their basic competencies, okay, and working at the cellular level, so that everything that is being done, they are taking their entire organization with them. Because again, their HR policies are very, very family oriented. So they would prefer carrying their own people because for them, the element of trust is based on legacy. They wouldn't believe in a hire and fire policy. You'll see a lot of screaming going on, people shouting at their juniors and subordinates and so on. But they will not fire them that easily as an Infosys would. Sorry, I don't mean to take Infosys' name just like that. It was just because there was a newspaper article of late saying that some 400 interns did not make the cut on the evaluating exam and they were asked to leave. And I wouldn't say that Infosys is doing it on purpose. For them, it's a business call. And it is explained to these people when they join. But the point is, a family-owned firm will find it very difficult to take a call like that. Yeah? Because again, for them, their reputation is very important. So what I'd like to see myself doing in the near future and in the considerably long-term future, say the next 10 odd years, is to help companies of that type, the family-owned company, the small-sized company, and finding their own mark in the new way of working with access to new technologies, taking a conscious decision on what they would like to imbibe from that portfolio of new technologies. What do I want to select today? Where do I set my from here to here? And then how do I take it to the next step and then to the next step and to the next step? So for them, transformation is more like a staircase rather than an elevator. So they go step by step. They are making sure that they are extracting the value of a technology to its fullest extent, because all said and done for them, it's all ROI. They would want to squeeze out every iota of benefit before they go to the next step, and which is what it should be as well. So that is where I see a huge white space where someone like me and a lot of people like me who bring in a significant amount of corporate experience, a sound understanding of corporate processes, whether it is a sales process, technology implementation process, manufacturing process, financial process, compliance processes, and so on. People like us, we can add a lot of value in helping companies like these transform in the true sense of the word, rather than call off saying that, look, I've transformed because I've got the latest version of Salesforce.com, or I've transformed because I've adopted some 3 new LLMs and I'm doing something wonderful in the area of machine learning. So it has to be about the means, not necessarily, I mean, it has to be about the end and not the means. The means to the end is where people like me come in and we help the customers take a call in terms of where they would want to invest their money so that their investments are delivering the results that they expect. And more importantly, they are aiming for the right results.
Thank you for your response. And we wish you nothing but continued success. I'm sure, with the years of experience and your value systems, there's a lot that you'll be able to add to whatever venture or boardroom that you're a part of. ESG is increasingly becoming a central focus for businesses worldwide, with organizations looking to make a positive impact on both society and the environment. So, as someone with such a wealth of experience in leadership and transformation, how do you see the role of ESG in shaping the future of businesses?
It's immense. Because again, ESG is an existential point. It's no longer a fad. It's an existential point. Because as a parent, I know that I have not inherited this planet from my parents. I am borrowing it from my children. So it is the next generation's world that I am currently operating it. So it is my duty to hand it over to them in a better shape and form than what I found it. So I cannot, and on one hand, I cannot go and blame my predecessors saying that, look, the previous generations created a mess. They started pollutant forms of manufacturing. They did not adopt enough checklists and means of verifying that, pollutants are not being dumped in rivers. Okay. Work cultures are being made safer. They may be the truth that I have landed into, but it's my job to make sure that when I'm handing the world over to my successors, it's in a much more healthier space. Because all said and done, the way population is growing, the way arable land on which agriculture can be done is shrinking. All these factors come in. It's an existential point. We don't have anywhere else to go. We should realize that. There is this very popular anecdote that an anthropologist once said in an interview. I attended a workshop in NASCOM that if ants were to vanish from the face of the earth, the ecosystem
Yes.
as we know it on Earth will collapse in about
Yeah.
4 years. Nothing will
Yes.
happen
If
to
the
human
insects
beings because we
vanish.
are on the top of the food chain. So on the top of the food chain, we vanish. Nothing much will happen to the rest of the space. So if we have managed to work our way to the top of the food chain, because either we have an opposable thumb or gods have blessed us with the ability to think irrationally, and we have the ability to work out teamwork in a very flexible way. Okay, these are few traits and many more that separate us from other species of life forms on this earth. We also owe it to be more responsible about what we are doing to the planet. Okay, now you compare Ganga as a river and you compare any other river in any other country. We attach a lot of godhood to the river, and we call Ganga Maya, etc., etc., etc. Not a There is no channel which is not showing the Mahakumbh which is currently going on. But if
Right.
you see countries who look at the river as an asset, they take care of the asset. When we
Correct.
look at the river as a goddess or as a motherhood character, we abuse it.
I agree.
If we were to change our mindset and look at that as an asset, as a perishable asset, we would be a lot more careful about how we use it. We are a lot more careful about how we use money because we consider money as a valuable asset which could go away from us if we don't behave sensibly with it. So
But
that
I
is a
think
mindset
people
that we need to change.
I
And
think
yeah,
people
sorry, you think.
still don't understand the importance of resources because probably it's available to such an extent. Something like people may not don't even know that soil is a natural resource. When you
Yeah,
talked about arable land, the topsoil is being blown away because of soil erosion and all these other problems.
correct,
But then people don't understand because it's so largely available for now, they think that it's something that will stay with them forever. Yeah.
correct. So when you're looking at the world from that point of view, uh, you either are driven by change that comes from within, and a lot of these small size companies that I speak about, they are actually driving that, or you are subjected to another form of implementing this by the powers to be, the government and the administrative powers to be. They tell you that, look, you and companies like you have already caused damage to the environment, so this is the penalty you need to pay. So it's a
Right.
punitive element that comes in. Now there are two ways to look at it. One can either look at it as a symbiotic way of living with nature and saying that, look, this is what I am doing to keep my environment clean. I don't have to clean the whole world, I can clean my environment. And if every company starts thinking the same way, the sigma factor builds up, and as a community the country improves. So it's like, it starts with an individual. The second element that ESG needs to bring in is a cyclical economy where we are making sure that resources are going back in a healthy form to its base. There used to be a time when across every household in India, regardless of religious affiliation or their layer in the economic strata, most people would eat on leaves. It's not that they didn't have access to metal. India had the highest growth of gold and silver mining and metal plating and so on. But they would take food on perishable tableware, and they would feed the tableware to the cows in the backyard. So the cycle is completed. And at the same time, there is nothing in a net form, when you look at the larger scheme of pluses and minuses, there is nothing being taken away from nature. Whatever you're taking, You're consuming and you're giving it back to the nature. So the circle of life is fairly completed that way. Now we need to employ that mindset to the corporate framework. Now, of course, there is technology coming in, there are new materials coming in. Those new materials will come with their own share of how they are being mined, how they are being processed, what sort of wastages are coming out of it. If you are looking at nuclear fuel as a clean fuel, the spent nuclear fuel, how are we disposing of it so that they don't leach into the water tables below the earth? We need to be careful about all these things. So, there is a lot of consciousness that needs to come in, because all said and done, again, this is the engineer's way of looking at it, where a manager is expected to maximize shareholders' wealth. The shareholder is seen as someone who has put money in the company. Nature in no way has been included in the list of shareholders. So this has to come as a very, very important part of the management mindset. And that is something that I look
Right.
forward to working on while I populate board rooms. As a matter of fact,
Right.
there is a new concept that we are working on in schools. Have you heard of this concept called Miyawaki forests? So
Miyawaki.
traditional
No.
foresting methodologies, they require that you give a separation of so many feet or so many meters between two saplings, right? So that they get adequate
Right.
water. So
Yes.
the
Yes.
Miyawaki principle works exactly opposite, saying that you over plant trees and you focus on local species so that they fight for resources. So
So
the
you don't
Miyawaki
have
foresting,
invasive species coming and overtaking or
not exactly. This is more about survival of the fittest.
okay.
So
Okay.
we take trees for granted because trees don't have vocal cords. If you could hear a tree scream, you wouldn't cut a tree. So the point is, you overpopulate trees in the same plot of land, and you use drip irrigation, and you provide bare minimum sustenance for all of them. Some trees will grow faster than the other trees, and as a matter of fact, the race will ensure in such a way that you have a very thick section of trees in the same area, and that has created a green lung for the community over there without necessarily taking that much of real estate space. And you're right,
Right.
invasive species will not survive over there because they will not get any resources. Because these trees, they have grown so aggressively, they have grown so ferociously that they will deny access to invasive species, they will deny them access to nutrients and to water.
Understood. Mr. Vaidyanathan, as we reach the end of the interview, as someone who's led transformative initiatives across industries, what was your motivation for joining Directors Institute, and how has it enhanced your perspective on governance and leadership?
See, when my Satyam episode happened, so somewhere that was the initial point for me to start looking at, okay, what would I do if I were in that Satyam boardroom? Would I have done things any different, and what would I have done different? So that was always the motivating factor for me to look at becoming a director or influencing management decisions, or being someone who could either guide or mentor boardrooms. And this thought was there with me since the 2010s 2015 time frame, to look at this as a vocation. But I didn't want to take that up purely on a professional basis, saying that, okay, I don't have anything else to do, so I'm going to become a director. So at that point in time, I was focusing on building my resume, and I never lost sight of the fact that someday I'd like to put myself in this space where I could mentor young companies and help them become more responsible corporate citizens who are successful in their spaces of work. In and I've been following some of the material from Directors Institute for some time. I had attended one presentation for them, I think 2 years ago. So it was a very thought out process. I did not join them on a whim. So I was quite impressed with whatever I read on their website. I spoke to a few colleagues of mine who have been their students. I've seen some of their material beforehand, and I had also compared their material with a few other institutes who are in the same business, who provide guidance and learning opportunities for people to become a director. And I already had a DIN, because when I set up my own LLP, I had to get a DIN for as part of the process of creating the LLP. So I didn't necessarily need to undergo the academic route towards becoming a director. I was already a director with the DIN, and that would qualify me to apply for positions as such. The idea was to get a thorough understanding of what went as building blocks into becoming a director who could contribute. So in my parlance, a successful director is not someone who is getting the most appearance fees or sitting fees or consulting fees. Uh, Again, the impact that one is able to create, the results that one is able to leave behind as legacy. Because independent director or NED positions, they don't last forever, right? You were there for a brief period of time, and then the system mandates that your directorship comes to an end. So within that period of time, what is the legacy you leave behind? For me, that is a yardstick of a successful independent director. And I found the Director Institute team quite responsive. Even after I joined them, I was pestering them a lot of questions here and there. Whenever I had a area of difficulty in understanding, I used to send a request. I got responses in fairly good time. So I found them a very, very rewarding experience.
Um, Mr. Vaidyanathan, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Your insights into leadership, transformation, and the future of business are truly inspiring. And it's clear that your journey has been one of both purpose and impact. So, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us and the valuable lessons you've learned along the way and shared them and being so honest and candid with our listeners. As we wrap up, it's evident that your vision for the future, both in business and governance, will continue to shape the industry for years to come. So, thank you so much for being with us on FaceTime with Leaders.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to have this conversation with you. And honestly, as you ask these questions, it also makes me look back. Okay, am I doing the
Reflect.
right thing? Yes, yes, yes. And then it's quite self-affirming. Thanks.
To our audience, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's conversation, do not forget to subscribe and stay connected for more inspiring stories from exceptional leaders. Until next time, keep leading with purpose and passion. Take care and see you soon.
Bye.